I, 35, female, met my ex-boyfriend Zack, 38, male, almost 6 years ago while I was working at a restaurant. He was really nice, charming, mature. He made me feel loved and special. For some context, I grew up in a dysfunctional family. My dad and mom were both alcoholics who always used to fight. My dad passed away when my sister Beatrice, 32, was born. For some reason, my mom was way too fond of Beatrice since her birth rather than me. This is why Beatrice was basically babied by my mother. After Zack entered my life, I felt a newfound sense of fulfillment. He was supportive and caring, always showering me with gifts and taking me on long drives. With him, I felt whole. However, our relationship wasn't all smooth in the beginning. In fact, he was cheating on me 4 times and even left me twice to be with other girls. Every time it wouldn't work out with them, he would come back crying, saying how I was the one and would beg me for forgiveness. Looking back, I had such low self-esteem during that time that I would think I could make him change for me. But his antics continued. He would continue to follow random women on Instagram, and I found out that he had been texting with his ex, so we had a huge fight regarding this. During these arguments, he would try to gaslight and manipulate me into believing that I should be a better girlfriend to him if I didn't want him to be distracted. All of this started to get to me, so I decided to take a break with him, telling him that I needed to clear up my head. He started arguing with me that I was making a big mistake, but I knew I needed some space away from him to think. During this time, I made it clear to him that I didn't want him to talk with my mother and sister regarding this, since they had become quite attached to him after I had introduced them. He told me, if I want to talk to them, I will. You're no one to stop me. I tried to reason with him that this was our private matter, and if he wanted us to work, then he should not go and blabber anything to my family. However, my ex would frequently text my family and would even hang out with them. My mom and sister would then lie to me about it if I asked them about being in contact with Zack. Due to their frequent hangouts and text messages, my family found out that I had broken up with Zack, and this did not sit well with them. They confronted me about it, telling me how I should stop with this break nonsense and get back together with Zack. My younger sister, Beatrice, started telling me how Zack loved me and missed me, so I should get over my childishness or else someone else might take up Zack. I asked them if they knew exactly why I had asked Zack for a break, and to my shock, my mother nodded. She said how Zack had told her everything and she still didn't see why I needed space from him. I tried to explain to her how he had exchanged inappropriate messages, left me for 2 women, and continued to be in contact with his ex. But my mom interrupted me, saying how we are so young and men sometimes do this. My eyes widened in shock, and I asked her if my father had ever cheated on her. She shook her head, saying that she had actually cheated on my father once because she was blackout drunk, but my father had chosen to forgive her. She continued to say how I needed to show grace to Zack, since he is the only guy who has stuck by me. I don't know why, but my family's words got to me, so I decided to get back with Zack the very next day. But this time I told him that we both needed to go for counseling to address his cheating issues. He begrudgingly agreed, and we had a few sessions attempting to delve into the root causes of his behavior. As a result, our communication started to improve and our relationship started seeing some positive changes. He unfollowed random girls and would no longer send inappropriate messages to anyone. This was a blissful time in our relationship. We had healthy sex and overall things seemed to be going well. This is why I started getting eager to tie the knot with him. But Zack said that he believed in securing our finances before considering marriage and children, hence I respected this. Truly, he was turning into the perfect partner for me, or so I thought. However, last month I uncovered something that absolutely rocked my world. My boyfriend had been cheating on me with my sister Beatrice. His deceit came to light when he claimed to be out of town for a week, but I discovered receipts in his pocket that showed he had been in town all along. I immediately got suspicious, so that night, when he was sleeping, I checked his phone, and this is how I discovered his messages with Beatrice. There were hundreds of messages where they had confessed their love for each other as well as exchanged nudes. I had tears in my eyes as I felt my heart break, realizing that my own sister had done this to me. This betrayal came out of nowhere and absolutely destroyed my once perfect life. Beatrice and I had been close since childhood. I loved her and looked out for her. How could she betray me like this? Looking back, there were signs I should have noticed. Beatrice's overly affectionate behavior towards Zack and his occasional lingering glances at her should have raised red flags, but I was too oblivious. I knew that I could never forgive Zack for this, so I decided to take screenshots of all their messages and send them to my email as proof. I confronted Zack the next day about this, and we had a heated argument. I demanded to know how he could betray our trust, especially with my younger sister. His response shattered me. He claimed he no longer loved me, saying how I had changed and that I didn't give him attention anymore. I started yelling at him about how I had stuck with him and decided to forgive him for everything wrong he had done to me, yet he had betrayed me by sleeping with my sister. My ex told me without a single remorse on his face that my sister understood him better, and he had come to realize that he was with the wrong sister all along. After this, he packed his bags and left, leaving me behind crying. When I called my mother to confront her about this, she was shocked in the beginning, but then when she found out that Zack wanted to be with Beatrice, she started to say that maybe Zack was never meant to be with me, and that I should be happy for my younger sister. I couldn't believe how cruel my own mother could be. She was ready to forgive Zack for cheating on me as long as he would date Beatrice. I cut short my conversation with my mother. That night, I cried myself to sleep. I felt every kind of emotion, lost, scared, angry, and like I had been used. Despite the pain, my heart couldn't help but ache, torn between the love I had for Zack and the way he had betrayed me with my sister. The next day, I woke up to multiple calls from my sister. When I finally gathered the strength to check my phone, I found a lengthy message from Beatrice. She expressed sorrow for the situation, but her tone felt more condescending than apologetic. In her message, she detailed how sorry she felt for me discovering this way, yet it sounded more like a justification for her actions. The worst part was when she mentioned she was 1 month pregnant with Zack's child, a revelation that made me physically ill. As if that wasn't enough, Beatrice's message continued, expressing her hope that I could let Zack go peacefully since she loved him, and they both wished to marry before the baby arrived. The sheer audacity left me speechless. I couldn't bring myself to reply. All I wanted to do was drown in my tears and process the whirlwind of emotions raging within me. Despite my attempts to grieve in solitude, my mother and sister bombarded me with calls. I ignored them, hoping for a moment of solace. Yet they showed up unannounced at my doorstep, catching me off guard. Before I could utter a word, they barged in, saying how they needed to talk to me. I couldn't believe they had the nerve to show up uninvited. Once they were seated, they eyed me up and down, and then came the questions, dripping with judgment. Have you just been sulking this whole time? Ignoring our calls? My sister's tone was particularly condescending, like she was judging me for sulking after I had just discovered that she had slept with my boyfriend. I couldn't hold back. I have nothing to say to either of you, I replied, my voice trembling with anger. My sister smirked, seeing the disdainful expression on my face. You're just jealous that I finally got someone like Zack, she said, trying to act as if this was some sort of competition and Zack was the prize. I shot her a glare, unable to comprehend her audacity. I then asked her if she even knew what Zack had done to me in the past. She nodded, saying, Zack told me everything. He told me how he did all those things because he wasn't happy with you. Don't worry. He would never cheat on me or leave me for other women. I am a better fit for him. Her cruel words felt like a punch to the gut. I was seething. "You're living in a fantasy if you think he's going to change," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "And now that I see your true colors, I'm glad you ended up with someone like him." My words ignited a storm of anger from my mother and sister. They started lashing out, accusing me of being immature. As if the situation couldn't get any more absurd, my mother dropped another bombshell. Apparently, Beatrice and Zack had decided to get married after finding out that she was pregnant. They wanted to sweep it all under the rug before the rest of the family found out about the pregnancy before marriage. My mother insisted I needed to attend the wedding so I could publicly support my sister to prevent any family resentment towards them. I immediately refused, saying how preposterous they were for expecting me to be there when both of them had stabbed me in the back. My mom then started threatening me that if I didn't come to Beatrice's wedding, then she would make sure that I was kicked out of my grandfather's inheritance. Now, my grandfather wasn't a millionaire, but he has done quite well in life. I seethed with anger as I listened to my mother's demands. But then a wicked idea sparked in my mind. At that moment, I made a decision. I would attend the wedding just to make sure that the truth would come out and expose my mother and Beatrice in front of everyone. I knew exactly how to turn the tables, how to make them realize the depth of their betrayal. With a forced smile, I played along, telling them that they were right, and there was no point in me dwelling on my failed relationship with Zack when they were going to get married anyway. I informed them that despite everything, I would attend their wedding and wish them the best. Beatrice's smile of satisfaction confirmed that this was exactly what she had hoped for. I plastered on a fake smile and lied to them through gritted teeth, and they believed me. Since this conversation, I have been going back and forth about whether or not I should or should not expose Beatrice in front of the entire family. One part of me feels sympathy for my little sister, who I have always loved, yet the other part knows that I won't be at peace if I don't speak my truth to the whole world. AITA if I attend my sister's wedding and tell everybody about what she has done. Update 1. I first want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the many encouraging comments. This whole experience was a major wake-up call to not allow my family to behave with me this way and get away with it. I have thought long and hard about my boundaries, people-pleasing tendencies. It also makes me realize I am not alone, and I have several strong people in this community who stand up for themselves and are learning these lessons too. I have made up my mind now. I will confront my sister, mother, and Zack in front of everyone else and expose all their lies. They're getting married next month at the church. My mother has started inviting people, and some of these relatives who have known my relationship with Zack and have seen his pictures with me were shocked to find out that he is marrying my sister. Several of them have called me to find out what is going on, but I've decided to stay quiet and lay low. I don't want to lie and pretend with them that everything is okay. I will directly speak the truth about their wedding with proof. Update 2. Hey everyone. It's been 2 months since my last update. I know I have made you guys wait for a long time, but I have been quite busy picking up the broken pieces of my life. Anyway, I won't dilly-dally any longer, so here it goes. When Beatrice's and Zack's wedding day arrived, I plastered a facade of composure on my face, despite the turmoil within me, and went to their wedding. I wore a floor-length red dress that Zack had bought me and had always complimented me in that dress. I wanted him to remember me forever in this dress as I walked into his wedding and destroyed his life. The ceremony went smoothly, with Beatrice and Zack exchanging vows amidst smiles and congratulations. Everyone seemed blissfully unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. As the reception began, I felt a knot of tension tightening in my chest. It was time to execute my plan. When the moment came for speeches, my mother took the first turn to say how happy and proud she was to see both Zack and Beatrice happy. I don't know what story my mother had spun to my relatives, but everyone looked happy for the couple. She said how she couldn't imagine anyone else more capable than Zack to marry her little girl, and how she was excited for their future. I wanted to throw up, but I let her have her moment. When she sat down after the speech, I stood up, my heart pounding with anticipation. All eyes turned to me, expectant smiles on their faces. I saw Beatrice and my mother turn to look at me, not knowing what I was about to do. Taking a deep breath, I seized the opportunity to speak my truth. I started first by congratulating the newlyweds, and then I started saying how Beatrice was lucky to have a sister like me, since she would have never met Zack had I not dated him first. I saw Beatrice's face go pale as I continued saying how from a very young age Beatrice and I had always shared everything, which is perhaps why Beatrice thought as an adult she could share my boyfriend also. Everyone gasped in shock while my mother looked pissed. Her face was red in anger and she looked like she could kill me right then and there. I didn't care anymore, honestly, so I continued saying how Zack had cheated on me multiple times over the years and how I was shocked to find out that my own sister had been sleeping with him. With each word, the room fell silent, hanging on to my every syllable. I exposed the betrayal and the way Zack handled our breakup. Shock rippled through the crowd, disbelief etched on their faces. I then continued to announce how after my mother had found out that Zack had been sleeping with Beatrice, she asked me to forgive them since Beatrice is pregnant. This is why they quickly decided to get married. My grandparents and relatives turned to look at my mother in shock while I continued to say how my mother threatened me for coming to this wedding and how she said I would be cut off from my grandfather's inheritance. Hearing this, my grandfather angrily got up from his seat and asked my mother if this was all true. My mother, true to her character, started to deny the accusation, saying how I was mentally ill since Zack decided to break up with me and how I was lying about all this, since I was just jealous of Beatrice. The air crackled with tension as my relatives began to question my mother, demanding answers. My sister also joined in with my mother to say how we should not take my words to heart since I was just upset that Zack didn't love me. She admitted that Zack was my boyfriend first, but started to say how he never loved me and I was making up everything else. Undeterred, I smiled and did what I knew I had to do all along. With trembling hands, I sent out a group message to the entire family right then and there, containing Beatrice and Zack's incriminating texts, including some of the inappropriate images they had taken in my bedroom, laying bare the truth for all to see. Phones began to ping incessantly, filling the room with the damning evidence of their betrayal. Some of my cousins gasped in shock as they saw the photos quickly, and then word spread. At that moment, the facade crumbled, revealing the ugly reality beneath. My mother's denial faltered, and she looked around in confusion until she checked the messages I had sent to the group, where she and Beatrice were also there. When my grandparents saw the messages, my grandfather angrily pointed his finger at my mother and said how ashamed he was that she was his daughter and how he didn't want to see her face ever again. My relatives started accusing Beatrice publicly about how she could do something so disgusting to her own sister. Guests got up angrily, looking for an exit. Some even demanded Beatrice and Zack to give back their wedding gifts since they didn't want to give them anything after finding out how disgusting they really were. As the chaos unfolded, my grandparents came to hug me, saying how sorry they were for everything. For the first time, I had people coming up to me who understood exactly how I felt. All doubts about whether I had done the right thing or the wrong thing by exposing them vanished from my head. My grandfather then announced that he would be kicking my mother and sister out of his will, and that her out-of-wedlock child had no place in this family. Hearing this, Beatrice burst out crying as my mother rushed to comfort her. Beatrice, Zack, and my mother had to exit the venue while red-faced in embarrassment as my relatives continued to question them. I stood there in satisfaction, knowing that I was finally getting the revenge I had wanted all along. After they left the venue, the wedding was pretty much over. My family didn't want to leave me alone at such a vulnerable time, so my grandparents invited everyone back to their place so we could all sit and talk. I wish I could have done this sooner. I wish I would have asked my family for help, instead of wallowing in self-pity. I was so focused on my sorrow that I forgot how much the rest of the family loved me. I cried and laughed as we gathered in my grandparents' home, surrounded by the warmth of familial love. Looking back, I'm glad that I exposed Beatrice. Zack and my mother. Since their wedding, they have been laying low since all my relatives are extremely pissed at them. No one is on their side. I know that I have lost Beatrice forever, since I can never be close to her after how she betrayed me. But it hurts that my mother just sees her happiness and not my pain. Update 3. Hello. Good evening. Wow, I can't believe it's been 6 months since my last update. Life sure goes by too fast if you ask me. Thank you again for all your advice and comments. I tried to read them all and I wanted to give you all a little update. For the last 6 months I have found myself piecing things back together bit by bit. Despite the hurt and chaos, I discovered a newfound strength within me that kept me going. Days turned into weeks and I slowly started to feel like myself again. My grandparents and cousins have been my biggest support. Nowadays, I go to my grandparents' place every weekend to play Scrabble with them. I'm working hard at my job, so I seldom find any time to sit down and dwell about the past. I have joined the gym to keep myself busy. I have to mention before I forget that a week after the wedding, Zack had texted me. It was out of the blue, and seeing his name pop up in my notifications just brought back all the bad memories. I'm just paraphrasing his message. He basically mentioned that he misses me. He told me how he wished things ended differently with us, and now that reality has set in, he can't believe he is going to be a father so soon when he doesn't even want to be one. He said how he wished he could turn back time and do right by me. The whole message just sounded so pathetic, and I don't know why he would even think of reaching out to me. I didn't even bother replying back to him. Instead, I blocked him out completely. But there was this tiny part of me, a sort of last hurrah, that couldn't resist sending a screenshot of his message to Beatrice. It was my way of saying, "Look, this is your husband still reaching out to me even though you thought you were a better woman than me." After that, I blocked both Beatrice and my mother. It was time to close that chapter of my life for good, to focus on my own healing and well-being. Thanks to some of your recommendations, I have started going to therapy. It has become my safe haven, a place where I can untangle the mess of emotions swirling inside me. To be honest, it was quite difficult at first to relive what happened to me, but with each session I have felt a little lighter, a little more in control of my own narrative. It hasn't been an easy road, but with each passing day, I keep growing stronger. I'm no longer looking to date anyone at the moment and will only open up my heart when I am fully healed and ready. Stay tuned for more stories from our